Welcome to my Lasso podcast. Let's get into it. All right, today's Thursday. Let's go, baby. And this is the second to last A Court of Thorns and Roses episode. My goodness, we done did it, everybody. We done did it. All right. So this week and next week will be the last episodes for Court of Thorns and Roses. This book has been wonderful. I've really enjoyed this book. But I'm a man of the people. And the people, they want book 2 of Haunting Adeline. And I want to give you guys book 2 of Haunting Adeline. So, after this week and next week, we're going to finish this book up. And that is when we will start book 2 of Haunting Adeline, all right? And you guys will get the gloriousness that is that book. This book was great. I enjoyed it, but I just don't think it had enough of the sauce. You know what I mean? It didn't have enough of the sauce in it that I was hoping. You know, I get it. They're trying to, like, I get that she's trying to paint this world of like, oh yeah, you know, elves and they're fighting and there's war and famine and all this and all that. And, you know, and Feyre's just like this human that's in this world of just super powerful beings, and, you know, and she falls in love and everything. And I get it. It's fantastic to some degree, but we all know why we're here. You know what I mean? Like, And a lot of people have pointed this out to me in the comments, that they just loved how, like, vulgar, you know, Haunting Adeline was compared to this book, you know, and they're just like, how in the hell do you go from Haunting Adeline to A Court of Thorns and Roses? And for me, I really wanted to gauge, like, kind of where you guys were at, and so now I kind of see you guys are some nasty motherfuckers, all right? You guys are some nasty motherfuckers, and you just want to continue to hear Zayd smack up and stretch out Adeline, and, you know, I'm here for it, all right? I'm fucking here for it, man. You know, it is what it is. So we're going to go back to that. But before we get into chapters 43 and 44, we have our thread, and the thread today is, what is something you thought you were into, but when it happened, you realized you weren't? All right. Our first one. I enjoy live music, but I don't like big concerts. Bars, small venues are great, but big concerts are not my thing. You know, facts, man. Facts. I love big concerts sometimes, but I'm old. And I just don't like standing for an hour and a half. A lot of times I like going to, like, auditorium shows because you can sit down. That is, like, the greatest thing ever. Like, I went to Mayhem Fest just this past couple of weeks, beginning of October. And I'm telling you, man, I watched Architects, I watched Poppy, I watched Bad Omens. I got to watch them and enjoy them sitting down. It was beautimous. It was the most amazing thing ever. I left that venue feeling so good because I didn't have to stand up all fucking day. That was my shit, man. That was definitely my shit. I ain't gonna lie to you, bro. That was my shit. And Bad Omen's set was like an hour and a half, hour 45. And I was sitting down the whole time. It didn't even feel like an hour and a half, hour 45. It felt glorious. I was just sitting down, enjoying, headbanging in my seat. It was beautiful. It was beautiful, man. But this whole standing up for, you know, hour-long sets and stuff, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore, man. I'm so happy they're bringing back Warped Tour. But again, I'm like, fuck. I don't know if I'm ready to stand up that long, you know? I'm just saying, dude. I'm just saying. Management. Facts. Like, actually becoming a manager. You don't realize how, like, tough it is. You know, because, like, okay, when you're like, at the bottom, I guess you would say, and you're a worker and whatnot, you hate management. You're just like, fuck them, da 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 da. Then you become one of them, and you realize how hard it is to actually listen to both sides, and then they're both expecting you to take their side, and you're just like trying to deal with shit as diplomatically as possible. You're just like, oh my god, I see why these managers are so fucking hated, because their job's impossible. And it sucks. You're just like, yo man, like what the fuck. So facts. I feel you on that. I've only ever been in that position a couple times. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Architecture. As a kid, I was obsessed with designing buildings and floor plans and drawing it up. It was a nonstop obsession. I got into one of the best architecture schools for college, and it was like the minute I had to do it, the appeal was completely gone. I did find this one housing system class intriguing because it talked so much about government policy shaping housing, etc. And so I went into the architecture adjacent undergrad program and went to law school after. I work as an attorney in government, stuff both for governments shaping planning policy and for developers getting regularly approvals. So I work for architects all the time and absolutely love being a lawyer even when I have to do it. And I am still around architecture stuff, but not in the way that shut off my interest for it. That is so true. There's so many things that I've gotten into where like it seems like so much fun, and then when it becomes a job and you like have to do it, you're like, fuck dude, this sucks. Like, I don't care to do this anymore. It's not fun for me. It's not exciting. It's the worst feeling ever when you're so passionate about something and you're like, I want to be paid for this. I can't wait to get paid to do my passion, to do what I love. And then you do it and you get paid for it and you're just like, yo, this sucks. This is trash. So I feel you. There's been multiple times where like when I thought to myself, I want to find, what I love and enjoy, and you find something and you're just like, yeah, and then you do it for a while and you're like, yeah, no, this ain't it, chief. This ain't it. And this, when I started this podcast, I felt like it was going to be that, I really did. I got maybe like 15 or so episodes in and I was just like, yo, this bitch is a chore. I was like, this bitch is a chore, man. I'm like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. But then I think what changed for me is the fact that you guys, the listeners, started chiming in and sending in your scenarios and sending in your feedback and sending in your stuff. And I think that's what kept me going, and it made it less of a chore after that, because I felt like, oh my God, there's actually people that watch this and they're getting involved. And I thought that was really cool. And so once that started happening, I think that's what kind of propelled me further, because there was interaction from you guys and then reading you guys' comments and stuff like that. That really made me enjoy the space a little more. And so it's what kept me going, because I'm telling you, man, once you get into something and it just doesn't feel right, you kind of just like, oh, it just feels like a chore. It sucks, so. All right. All right, what is something you thought you were into, but then when you tried it, it wasn't for you? Hold on. Adult responsibilities. Ayo, facts. I be telling kids all the time, trust me, you don't want to be an adult. You don't want to do it. Stay a kid for as long as possible. All right? Oh my God, I be telling kids that. I be like, stop rushing to grow up. Stop it. Because trust me, when you hear, it's trash, man. It is trash. You have to pay for everything you do in life. As a kid, man, you get to do so many cool things without the repercussions of paying for anything or being responsible for anything. Like, you drive your car, you got to pay for that. Whether it's tags, gas, whatever. Even paying to get that motherfucker fixed when it breaks down. All right? If you want to go somewhere, guess what? You're paying for that too, because you're either paying for food to eat, you're paying to get in the building, you're paying in some fucking way. You're paying for it. If you want to stay home, you are still paying to stay home, whether it's rent, it's bills, it's what it's groceries, whatever it is. You're paying to stay home. All right? Being an adult fucking sucks because no matter what you do in life, you have to pay for it. Hell, even going to work, you're paying for it. Why? Because you're either buying lunch, you're, wasting gas driving there. I don't know. Just everything you do as an adult, bro, you pay for it. You know what I mean? And it's just terrible. You go home and you're just like fat. You're just like, I don't want to do anything. You know what I mean? I'm tired. And money is just coming out of your account as you're just laying there. Oh, it's the worst. It's the worst feeling in the entire world, man. Yep. Adult responsibilities. Don't grow up, kids. Just don't do it. All right, LARPing. Thanks to good old school bullying, I embraced my nerdery, later in life, and had always quite liked the idea of trying LARPing, a long weekend away pretending to be an adventurer, getting drunk on mead in the evening. Cut to me, a 37-year-old crying in his tent because I was being made to feel stupid for not knowing everything about the lore and that spanned 2 decades, Jesus, and being outright ignored because my character was low level and had no money. I thought I'd finally find people who were nice because they were bullied earlier in life. Instead, I found people who were glad of a chance to be the bullies. Damn, that sucks. Like, he's like, I'm going to this to get out of the bullying. I want to be accepted. What the fuck? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, what the fuck is this, man? That's gotta suck, dude. Hey, man, you finally join a community where you're like, yes, these are my peoples. Let's go. I'm about this. And they make fun of you. And you're like, yo, okay, fuck me then. You know? Like, bro, that's gotta suck. That has gotta suck, dude. Dating a nymphomaniac. I thought I had a hard sex drive, but after this girl wanted to spend practically every waking moment in bed with me, although fun at first, started becoming more of a chore than something fun. I could barely be away long enough to make dinner before she was calling me back there. Definitely one of those be careful what you wish for kind of scenarios. Hey, man, women got to understand we have cool downs, all right? We got cool downs. And it sucks because, you guys don't have cooldowns. You guys can bust a nut and keep going. We got cooldowns. We got nerfed, all right? We got a major nerf. And so, when we nut, we got to wait a little bit, man. And if I'm being honest with you, nymphomaniac sounds great, sounds fantastic, but when you're the one in the sexual equation that is kind of doing most of the work, yes, it gets tiring really quick because I'm doing all the humping and gyrating while you're just laying there and you're just taking the penis, I mean, hell, even you being on top, you still ain't doing as much as me. Like, let's be real here, And you're really only going to be on top for just a little bit. Let's be honest here. You ain't going to be on top for very long. I don't know any girls that are on top for a very long time. They're usually up there for a little bit, give it a couple minutes, and then they're like, all right, I'm done. Roll over. I'm ready to be on the bottom again. Man, like, come on now. Yeah, but I get it. In the beginning, I bet that shit is fantastic. But I can see how I can get old real quick. Yeah, because I like a little variety, a little spice in my sex, to where it's like, it's a little spontaneous sometimes, spontaneous here. We maybe give it a couple days, we charge up and kind of build a bit of like some sexual tension, even though like we're dating and together, but, we still build up a little sexual tension, whatnot, through a couple days and then, just bang it out. Well, that's my shit. But doing it every day and every second of every day, that it's like, all right, man, there's only so much I could see. Now, if she's like changing it up all the time, whether it's different outfits, whether it's different, ways of initiating, stuff like that, it could work. It could work. It'll still get old, but I think it'll take a little longer for it to get old, But hey, all right. I'm going to do 3 more and then we'll get into our chapters. I thought I liked tech. I became a programmer, then technical manager, architect, and so on, only to realize that I don't care about it that much. I was very certain I was a computer nerd, and I'm not at all. I enjoy architecture more, but it pays well, so I will waste my life crafting overly complicated systems that aren't really needed. Damn. Yeah, I mean that's like what we went over, you know what I mean? There's so many things where like when you're trying to find a passion and you finally get to a point where you get to do it and you get to experience it, and then you're just like, "Oh, this sucks." It just feels like a chore after a while. So, facts, feel you, brother. Okay. Going for motorcycle rides in big groups, not cruising style, sports/nakeds. Okay. Thought it'd be a nice chance to meet people and enjoy the camaraderie and get to go on some nice routes I'd never have thought of otherwise. It's just a group of idiots on motorcycles that vary from way below your skill level, and you end up worrying about them, to way above your skill level, and they're just fucking off into the distance. And when when you're all deciding to stick together for a section, you end up with people getting uncomfortably close or not staggering during the ride. Overall, it's a shitty way to ride, and for me, I got absolutely zero enjoyment out of it. I'd rather be on my own or with a group of 2 or 3 at most. Facts, and that's why I got out of the car community. Because the car community, I feel like, is just a bunch of dudes who always want to see who's the fastest. And for me, I'm like, bro, I don't care if you're faster than me. I want to cruise in our dope ass cars. You know what I mean? I want to share car knowledge. I want to, hang out with like-minded individuals. I don't give a fuck if you have 300 more horsepower than I do, or you would beat me in a straight line, or what. I don't care. And that's what really sucks. Like, whenever I have a heavily modified Evo 10, and whenever I drive that car and I drive it around and I see somebody else with a modified car, I'm like, yo, and I like to drive up next to them because I know it looks cool. I know to other people it looks badass, but I drive up to him and he's just like, oh yeah, he wants to race. And I'm like, no, bruh, I don't want to race you. Sometimes I roll my window down. I'm like, bro, I'm not trying to race. Like, I'm just trying to pull up next to you and be like, what's up? And that's why I got out of the car community, because the car community, low key, I feel is just like how he said with the biker community. It's just a bunch of people just trying to show off. And it's like, for what? For what? We already stand out in traffic because we have heavily modified cars. We already stand out in traffic. Let's stand out together. And maybe pull over and share each other's Instagrams and be like, yo, man, what's up? Like, oh, dang, what did you do to your car? Da-da-da-da. Like, bro, I'm trying to make friends. But everybody's just like, oh, this is my enemy and I must race you. And it's like, all right, bro. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll like egg him into a race so that way he shoots off and I just keep cruising. Because I'm like, bro, I don't give a fuck, man. Yeah, I can't stand that. I can't stand that. And I used to go to car meets and stuff like that. But again, people are just like, oh, let's race. And I'm just like, bro, I'm not here for that. I'm not here for that. I'm here to like talk to like-minded people. And there's so many times and they're like, oh, your car's just probably slow. And da-da-da. I'm like, sure, it's slow. That's fine. You know what I mean? I'm not here for all of that, bro. Like, I'm here to talk to like-minded people, share some car knowledge. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I'm trying to do this to my car. Would you know, like a good way to do it? And you know what I mean? Like, it's just not like that anymore. And I feel like TikTok and Instagram and, young kids have really fucked it up and they ruined it, with the whole takeover scene and all that. And it's not the same anymore. It's not the same anymore. It's who could be the biggest idiot, and that's really what it is. And it kind of sucks. All right. This is going to be our last one for this thread. Drinking, not an alcoholic by any stretch, but realize not drinking leads to a lot more stable mind and calm thoughts. If you suffer from anxiety, I highly recommend giving up drinking and taking up exercise, even 30 minutes of walking every day. You'll feel incredible after a few weeks. If I'm being honest with you, like, I don't drink that much. But there's times that when I do drink and I'm having fun and stuff like that, and I drink alcohol, it just makes me feel shitty. A lot of times I'm like, in the moment, I'm like, yeah, I'll have like one or two drinks with friends and stuff like that. But I have a very sensitive stomach, and alcohol does not like a sensitive stomach. And I just hate the feeling of having to throw up all the time. I hate that fucking feeling. That's why I don't drink a lot. I'll have a beer here and there, but for the most part, I just hate that feeling. It sucks. It's the worst feeling possible. And so all my sensitive stomach people out there, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? And that's why alcohol just don't agree with us a lot of times. It's a bummer, but it is what it is. But that's going to go ahead and be that thread, man. Hope you guys enjoyed that thread. If you guys have something that you tried to get into and you got into it and you realize it wasn't your bread and butter, it wasn't your PB&J, let your boy know down in the comments. Get involved in there, and I'd love to read your comments. Let's get through you guys' worst part of the or you guys' least favorite part of the show, announcements, and then we'll hop into A Court of Thorns and Roses chapters 43 and 44. Patreon.com/MileyAsshole Podcast. Get that exclusive episode every single Friday. If you guys are iffy about the Patreon, I got the links down there for you for the free Patreon Day episodes, whether you're on Spotify or YouTube. Check them out. See if the Patreon is for you. You also get to send in your scenarios to be featured on Tuesday and Sunday shows. So definitely get in there, get involved. All right. If you're an audio listener, keep downloading the podcast as well as rate 5 stars. If you haven't already, it helps out the show a lot. And guess what? It's faux free. And if it's faux free, it is faux me. And if you want to help out the show even more for free, go ahead and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, as well as YouTube. All right. Love you guys so much. Appreciate all the support you guys have been showing. Without further ado, though, we're going to go ahead and get into this book for you guys. We have chapters 43 and 44.
Vanished. Chapter 43. For my final task, I was given my old tunic and pants, stained and torn and reeking, but despite my stench, I kept my chin high as I was escorted to the throne room. The doors were flung open, and the silence of the room assaulted me. I waited for the jeers and shouts, waited to see gold flash as the onlookers placed their bets, but this time the fairies just stared at me, the masked ones especially intently. Their world rested on my shoulders, Reese had said. But I didn't think it was worry alone that was spread across their features. I had to swallow hard as a few of them touched their fingers to their lips, then extended their hand to me. A gesture for the fallen, a farewell to the honored dead. There was nothing malicious about it. Most of these fairies belonged to the courts of the High Lords, had belonged to those courts long before Amarantha seized their lands, their lives. And if Tamlin and Rhysand were playing games to keep us alive. I strode up the path they'd cleared, straight for Amarantha. The queen smiled when I stopped in front of her throne. Tamlin was in his usual place beside her, but I wouldn't look at him. Not yet. 2 trials lie behind you, Amarantha said, picking at a fleck of dust on her blood-red gown. Her black hair shone, a gleaming darkness that threatened to swallow up her golden crown. And only one more awaits. I wonder if it will be worse to fail now, when you are so close. She gave me a pout, and we both awaited the laughter of the fairies. But only a few laughs hissed from the red-skinned guards. Everyone else remained silent. Even Lucian's miserable brothers, even Rhysand, wherever he was in the crowd. I blinked to clear my burning eyes. Perhaps, like Rhysand's, their odes of allegiance and betting on my life and nastiness had been a show. And perhaps now that the end was imminent, they too would face my potential death with whatever dignity they had left. Amarantha glared at them, but when her gaze fell upon me, she smiled broadly, sweetly. Any words to say before you die? I came up with a plethora of curses. but I instead looked at Tamlin. He didn't react. His features were like stone. I wished that I could glimpse his face, if only for a moment, but all I needed to see were those green eyes. "I love you," I said. No matter what she says about it, no matter if it's only with my insignificant human heart. Even when they burn my body, I'll love you. My lips trembled, and my vision clouded before several warm tears slipped down my chilled face. I didn't wipe them away. He didn't react. He didn't even grip the arms of his throne. I suppose that was his way of enduring it, even if it made my chest cave in, even if his silence killed me. Amarantha said sweetly, "You'll be lucky, my darling, if we even have enough left of you to burn." I stared at her long and hard, but her words were not met with jeers or smiles or applause from the crowd, only silence. It was a gift that gave me courage, that made me bunch my fists, that made me embrace the tattoo on my arm. I had beaten her until now, fairly or not, and I would not feel alone when I died. I would not die alone. It was all I could ask for. Amarantha propped her chin on a hand. "You never figured out my riddle, did you?" I didn't respond, and she smiled. "Pity. The answer is so lovely." "Get it over with," I growled. Amarantha looked at Tamlin. "No final words to her?" she said, quirking an eyebrow. When he didn't respond, she grinned at me. "Very well, then." She clapped her hands twice. A door swung open, and 3 figures, 2 male and 1 female, with brown sacks tied over their heads, were dragged in by the guards. Their concealed faces turned this way and that as they tried to discern the whispers that rippled across the throne room. My knees bent slightly as they approached. With sharp jabs and blunt shoves, the red-skinned guards forced the 3 fairies to their knees at the foot of the dais, but facing me. Their bodies and clothes revealed nothing of who they were. Amarantha clapped her hands again, and 3 servants clad in black appeared at the side of each of the kneeling fairies. In their long, pale hands, they each carried a dark velvet pillow, and on each pillow lay a single polished wooden dagger. Not metal for a blade, but ash. Ash because... "Your final task, Feyre," Amarantha drawled, gesturing to the kneeling fairies. "Stab each of these unfortunate souls in the heart." I stared at her, my mouth opening and closing. "They're innocent? Not that it should matter to you," she went on, "since it wasn't a concern the day you killed Tamlin's poor sentinel. And it wasn't a concern for dear Jurian when he butchered my sister. But if it's a problem, well, you can always refuse. Of course I'll take your life in exchange, but a bargain's a bargain, is it not? If you ask me, though, given your history with murdering our kind, I do believe I'm offering you a gift." Refuse and die. Kill 3 innocents and live. 3 innocents, for my own future, for my own happiness, for Tamlin and his court, and the freedom of an entire land. The wood of the razor-sharp daggers had been polished so expertly that it gleamed beneath the colored glass chandeliers. "Well?" she asked. She lifted her hand, letting Jurian's eye get a good look at me, at the ash daggers, and purred to it, "I wouldn't want you to miss this, old friend." I couldn't do it. It wasn't like hunting. It wasn't for survival or defense. It was cold-blooded murder. The murder of them, of my very soul. But for Prithian, for Tamlin, for all of them here, for Alice and her boys, I wished I knew the names of our forgotten gods so that I might beg them to intercede. Wished I knew any prayers at all to plead for guidance, for absolution. But I did not know those prayers or the names of our forgotten gods, only the names of those who would remain enslaved if I did not act. I silently recited those names, even as the horror of what knelt before me began to swallow me whole. For Prithian, for Tamlin, for their world and my own, these deaths would not be wasted, even if it would damn me forever. I stepped up to the first kneeling figure, the longest and most brutal steps I'd ever taken. 3 lives in exchange for Prithian's liberation, 3 lives that would not be spent in vain. I could do this. I could do this even with Tamlin watching. I could make this sacrifice them. I could do this. My fingers trembled, but the first dagger wound up in my hand, its hilt cool and smooth, the wood of the blade heavier than I'd expected. There were 3 daggers because she wanted me to feel the agony of reaching for that knife again and again, wanted me to mean it. "Not so fast." Amarantha chuckled, and the guards who held the first kneeling figure snatched the hood off its face. It was a handsome, high-fae youth. I didn't know him. I'd never seen him, but his blue eyes were pleading. "That's better," Amarantha said, waving her hand again. "Proceed, Farah dear. Enjoy it." His eyes were the color of a sky I'd never see again if I refused to kill him, a color I'd never get out of my mind, never forget, no matter how many times I painted it. He shook his head, those eyes growing so large that white showed all around. He would never see that sky either, and neither would these people if I failed. "Please," he whispered, his focus darting between the ash dagger and my face. "Please." The dagger shook between my fingers and I clenched it tighter. 3 fairies, that's all that stood between me and freedom before Tamlin would be unleashed upon Amarantha. If he could destroy her... Not in vain, I told myself, not in vain. "Don't," the fairy youth begged when I lifted the dagger. "Don't." I took a gasping breath, my lips shaking as I quailed. Saying I'm sorry wasn't enough. I'd never been able to say it to Andrus, and now... "Please," he said, and his eyes lined with silver. Someone in the crowd began weeping. I was taking him away from someone who possibly loved him as much as I loved Tamlin. I couldn't think about it. Couldn't think about who he was, or the color of his eyes, or any of it. Amarantha was grinning with wild, triumphant glee. Kill a fairy, fall in love with a fairy, then be forced to kill a fairy to keep that love. It was brilliant and cruel, and she knew it. Darkness rippled near the throne, and then Rhysand was there, arms crossed, as if he'd moved to better see. His face was a mask of disinterest, but my hand tingled. "Do it," the tingling said. "Don't," the young fairy moaned. I began shaking my head. I couldn't listen to him. I had to do it now before he convinced me otherwise. "Please!" His voice rose to a shriek. The sound jarred me so much that I lunged. With a ragged sob, I plunged the dagger into his heart. He screamed, thrashing in the guard's grip as the blade cleaved through flesh and bone, smooth as if it were real metal and not ash, and blood, hot and slick, showered my hand. I wept, yanking out the dagger, the reverberations of his bones against the blade stinging my hand. His eyes, full of shock and hate, remained on me as he sagged, damning me, and that person in the crowd let out a keening wail. My bloody dagger clacked on the marble floor as I stumbled back several steps. "Very good," Amarantha said. I wanted to get out of my body. I had to escape the stain of what I'd done. I had to get out. I couldn't endure the blood on my hands, the sticky warmth between my fingers. "Now the next. Oh, don't look so miserable, Feyre. Aren't you having fun?" I faced the second figure, still hooded. A female this time. The fairy in black extended the pillow with the clean dagger, and the guards holding her tore off her hood. Her face was simple, and her hair was gold brown, like mine. Tears were already rolling down her round cheeks, and her bronze eyes tracked my bloody hand as I reached for the second knife. The cleanness of the wooden blade mocked the blood on my fingers. I wanted to fall to my knees to beg her forgiveness, to tell her that her death wouldn't be for naught. Wanted to, but there was such a rift running through me now that I could hardly feel my hands, my shredded heart. What I'd done. "Cauldron, save me," she began whispering, her voice lovely and even, like music. "Mother, hold me," she went on, reciting a prayer similar to one I'd heard once before, when Tamlin eased the passing of that lesser fairy who'd died in the foyer. Another of Amarantha's victims. "Guide me to you." I was unable to raise my dagger, unable to take the step that would close the distance between us. "Let me pass through the gates. Let me smell that immortal land of milk and honey." Silent tears slid down my face and neck, where they dampened the filthy collar of my tunic. As she spoke, I knew I would be forever barred from that immortal land. I knew that whatever mother she meant would never embrace me. In saving Tamlin, I was to damn myself. I couldn't do this. Couldn't lift that dagger again. "Let me fear no evil," she breathed, staring at me, into the soul that was cleaving itself apart. "Let me feel no pain." A sob broke from my lips. "I'm sorry," I moaned. "Let me enter eternity," she breathed. I wept as I understood. "Kill me now," she was saying. "Do it fast. Don't make it hurt. Kill me now." Her bronze eyes were steady, if not sorrowful. Infinitely, infinitely worse than the pleading of the dead fairy beside her. I couldn't do it. But she held my gaze, and nodded. As I lifted the ash dagger, something inside me fractured so completely that there would be no hope of ever repairing it. No matter how many years passed, no matter how many times I might try to paint her face. More fairies wailed now, her kinsmen and friends. The dagger was a weight in my hand shining and coated with the blood of that first fairy. It would be more honorable to refuse, to die rather than murder innocents. But... "Let me enter eternity," she repeated, lifting her chin. "Fear no evil," she whispered, just for me. "Feel no pain." I gripped her delicate, bony shoulder and drove the dagger into her heart. She gasped, and blood spilled onto the ground like a splattering of rain. Her eyes were closed when I looked at her face again. She slumped to the floor and didn't move. I went somewhere far, far away from myself. The fairies were stirring now, shifting, many whispering and weeping. I dropped the dagger, and the knock of ash on marble roared in my ears. Why was Amarantha still smiling, with only one person left between myself and freedom? I glanced at Rhysand, but his attention was fixed upon Amarantha. One fairy, and then we were free. Just one more swing of my arm. And maybe one more after that. Maybe one more swing, up and inward, into my own heart. It would be a relief to end it by my own hand, a relief to die rather than face this, what I'd done. The fairy servant offered the last dagger, and I was about to reach for it when the guard removed the hood from the male kneeling before me. My hands slackened at my sides. Amber-flecked green eyes stared up at me. Everything came crashing down, layer upon layer, shattering and breaking and crumbling as I gazed at Tamlin. I whipped my head to the throne beside Amarantha's, still occupied by my High Lord, and she laughed as she snapped her fingers. The Tamlin beside her transformed into the Adder, smiling wickedly at me. Tricked, deceived by my own senses again. Slowly, my soul ripping further from me, I turned back to Tamlin. There was only guilt and sorrow in his eyes, and I stumbled away, almost falling as I tripped over my feet. "Something wrong?" Amarantha asked, cocking her head. Not fair," I got out. Rhysand's face had gone pale. So pale. "Fair?" Amarantha mused, playing with Jurian's bone on her necklace. "I wasn't aware you humans knew of the concept. You kill Tamlin and he's free." Her smile was the most hideous thing I'd ever seen. "And then you can have him all to yourself." My mouth stopped working. "Unless," Amarantha went on, "you think it would be more appropriate to forfeit your life. After all, what's the point? To survive only to lose him." Her words were like poison. Imagine all those years you were going to spend together, suddenly alone. Tragic, really. Though a few months ago you hated our kind enough to butcher us, surely you'll move on easily enough. She patted her ring. Jurian's human lover did. Still on his knees, Tamlin's eyes turned so bright, defiant. "So," Amarantha said, but I didn't look at her. "What will it be, Feyre?" Kill him and save his court and my life, or kill myself and let them all live as Amarantha's slaves. Let her and the King of Highburn wage their final war against the human realm. There was no bargain to get out of this, no part of me to sell to avoid this choice. I stared at the ash dagger on that pillow. Alice had been right all those weeks ago. No human who came here ever walked out again. I was no exception. If I were smart, I would indeed stab my own heart before they could grab me. At least then I would die quickly. I wouldn't endure the torture that surely awaited me, possibly a fate like Jurian's. Alice had been right. But Alice had said something to help me. A final part of the curse, a part they couldn't tell me, a part that would aid me. And all she'd been able to do was tell me to listen to what I'd heard, as if I'd already learned everything I needed. I slowly faced Tamlin again. Memories flashed, one after another, blurs of color and words. Tamlin was High Lord of the Spring Court. What did that do to help me? The great rite was performed? No. He lied to me about everything, about why I'd been brought to the manor, about what was happening on his lands. The curse. He hadn't been allowed to tell me the truth, but he hadn't exactly pretended that everything was fine. No. He'd lied and explained as best he could, and made it painfully obvious to me at every turn that something was very, very wrong. The adder in the garden, as hidden from me as I was from it. But Tamlin had hidden me. He'd told me to stay put, and then led the adder right toward me, let me overhear them. He'd left the dining room doors open when he'd spoken with Lucian about the curse, even if I hadn't realized it at the time. He'd spoken in public places. He'd wanted me to eavesdrop. Because he wanted me to know, to listen, because this knowledge... I ransacked each conversation, turning over words like stones. A part of the curse I hadn't grasped, that they couldn't explicitly tell me, but Tamlin had needed me to know. Milady makes no bargains that are not advantageous to her. She would never kill what she desired most, not when she wanted Tamlin as much as I did. But if I killed him, she either knew I couldn't do it, or she was playing a very, very dangerous game. Conversation after conversation echoed in my memory, until I heard Lucian's words and everything froze. And that was when I knew. I couldn't breathe, not as I replayed the memory, not as I recalled the conversation I'd overheard one day. Lucian and Tamlin in the dining room, the door wide open for all to hear, for me to hear. For someone with a heart of stone, yours is certainly soft these days. I looked at Tamlin, my eyes flicking to his chest as another memory flashed, the adder in the garden, laughing. Though you have a heart of stone, Tamlin, the adder said, you certainly keep a host of fear inside it. Amarantha would never risk me killing him, because she knew I couldn't kill him. Not if his heart couldn't be pierced by a blade. Not if his heart had been turned to stone. I scanned his face, searching for any glimmer of truth. There was only that bold rebellion within his gaze. Perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps it was just a fairy turn of phrase, but all those times I'd held Tamlin, I'd never felt his heartbeat. I'd been blind to everything until it came back to smack me in the face, but not this time. That was how she controlled him and his magic, how she controlled all the High Lords, dominating and leashing them just as she kept Jurian's soul tethered to that eye and bone. Trust no one, Alice had told me. But I trusted Tamlin, and more than that, I trusted myself. I trusted that I had heard correctly. I trusted that Tamlin had been smarter than Amarantha. I trusted that all I had sacrificed was not in vain. The entire room was silent, but my attention was upon only Tamlin. The revelation must have been clear on my face, for his breathing became a bit quicker, and he lifted his chin. I took a step toward him, then another. I was right. I had to be. I sucked in a breath as I grabbed the dagger off the outstretched pillow. I could be wrong. I could be painfully, tragically wrong. But there was a faint smile on Tamlin's lips as I stood over him, ash dagger in hand. There was such a thing as fate, because fate had made sure I was there to eavesdrop when they'd spoken in private. Because fate had whispered to Tamlin that the cold, contrary girl he'd dragged to his home would be the one to break his spell. Because fate had kept me alive just to get to this point, just to see if I'd been listening. And there he was, my High Lord, my beloved, kneeling before me. "I love you," I said, and stabbed him. Chapter 44. Tamlin cried out as my blade pierced his flesh, breaking bone. For a sickening moment, when his blood rushed onto my hand, I thought the ash dagger would go clean through him. But then there was a faint thud and a stinging reverberation in my hand as the dagger struck something hard and unyielding. Tamlin lurched forward, his face going pale, and I yanked the dagger from his chest. As the blood drained away from the polished wood, I lifted the blade. Its tip had been nicked, turned inward on itself. Tamlin clutched his chest as he panted, the wound already healing. Rhysand at the foot of the dais grinned from ear to ear. Amarantha climbed to her feet. The fairies murmured to one another. I dropped the blade, sending it clattering across the red marble. "Kill her now," I wanted to bark at Tamlin, but he didn't move as he pushed his hand against his wound, blood dribbling out. Too slowly. He was healing too slowly. The mask didn't fall off. Kill her now. "She won," someone in the crowd said. "Free them," another echoed. But Amarantha's face blanched, her features contorting until she looked truly serpentine. "I'll free them whenever I see fit." Feyre didn't specify when I had to free them, just that I had to. "At some point, perhaps when you're dead," she finished with a hateful smile. "You assumed that when I said instantaneous freedom regarding the riddle, it applied to the trials too, didn't you? Foolish, stupid human." I stepped back as she descended the steps of the dais. Her fingers curled into claws. Jurian's eye was going wild within the ring, his pupil dilating and shrinking. "And you," she hissed at me, "you." Her teeth gleamed, turning sharp. "I'm going to kill you." Someone cried out, but I couldn't move, couldn't even get out of the way as something far more violent than lightning struck me, and I crashed to the floor. "I'm going to make you pay for your insolence," Amarantha snarled, and a scream ravaged my throat as pain like nothing I had known erupted through me. My very bones were shattering as my body rose and then slammed onto the hard floor, and I was crushed beneath another wave of torturous agony. "Admit you don't really love him and I'll spare you," Amarantha breathed, and through my fractured vision I saw her prowl toward me. "Admit what a cowardly, lying, inconstant bit of human garbage you are." I wouldn't say that even if she splattered me across the ground. But I was being ripped apart from the inside out, and I thrashed, unable to outscream the pain. "Feyre!" someone roared. No, not someone. Rhysand. But Amarantha still neared. "You think you're worthy of him? A high lord? You think you deserve anything at all, human?" My back arched and my ribs cracked, one by one. Rhysand yelled my name again, yelled it as though he cared. I blacked out, but she brought me back, ensuring that I felt everything, ensuring that I screamed every time a bone broke. "What are you but mud and bones and worm meat?" Amarantha raged. "What are you compared to our kind that you think you're worthy of us?" Fairies began calling foul play. demanding Tamlin be released from the curse, calling her a cheating liar. Through the haze, I saw Rhysand crouching by Tamlin, not to help him, but to grab the... You are all pigs. All scheming, filthy pigs. I sobbed between screams as her foot connected with my broken ribs. Again and again. Your mortal heart is nothing to us. Then Rhysand was on his feet, my bloody knife in his hands. He launched himself at Amarantha, swift as a shadow, the ash dagger aimed at her throat. She lifted a hand, not even bothering to look, and he was blasted back by a wall of white light. But the pain paused for a second, long enough for me to see him hit the ground and rise again and lunge for her, with hands that now ended in talons. He slammed into the invisible wall Amarantha had raised around herself, and my pain flickered as she turned to him. You traitorous piece of filth, she seethed at Rhysand. You're just as bad as these human beasts. One by one, as if a hand were shoving them in, his talons pushed back into his skin, leaving blood in their wake. He swore, low and vicious. You were planning this all along. Her magic sent him sprawling, and it then hurled into Rhysand again, so hard that his head cracked against the stones and the knife dropped from his splayed fingers. No one made a move to help him, and she struck him once more with her power. The red marble splintered where he hit it, spiderwebbing toward me. With wave after wave she hit him. Rhys groaned. Stop, I breathed, blood filling my mouth as I strained a hand to reach her feet. Please. Rhys's arms buckled as he fought to rise, and blood dripped from his nose, splattering on the marble. His eyes met mine. The bond between us went taut. I flashed between my body and his, seeing myself through his eyes, bleeding and broken and sobbing. I snapped back into my own mind as Amarantha turned to me again. Stop. Stop. Don't pretend you care, human, she crooned and curled her finger. I arched my back, my spine straining to the point of cracking, and Rhysand bellowed my name as I lost my grip on the room. Then the memories began, a compilation of the worst moments of my life, a storybook of despair and darkness. The final page came, and I wept, not entirely feeling the agony of my body as I saw that young rabbit bleeding out in that forest clearing, my knife through her throat. My first kill. The first life I'd taken. I'd been starving, desperate. Yet afterward, once my family had devoured it, I had crept back into the woods and wept for hours, knowing a line had been crossed, my soul stained. Say that you don't love him, Amarantha shrieked, and the blood on my hands became the blood of that rabbit, became the blood of what I had lost. But I wouldn't say it, because loving Tamlin was the only thing I had left, the only thing I couldn't sacrifice. A path cleared through my red and black vision. I found Tamlin's eyes, wide as he crawled toward Amarantha, watching me die and unable to save me while his wound slowly healed, while she still gripped his power. Amarantha had never intended for me to live, never intended to let him go. Amarantha, stop this, Tamlin begged at her feet as he clutched the gaping wound in his chest. Stop. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I said about Clythia all those years ago, please. Amarantha ignored him, but I couldn't look away. Tamlin's eyes were so green, green like the meadows of his estate, a shade that washed away the memories flooding through me. that pushed aside the evil, breaking me apart, bone by bone. I screamed again as my kneecaps strained, threatening to crack in two, but I saw that enchanted forest, saw that afternoon we'd lain in the grass, saw that morning we watched the sunrise, when for a moment, just one moment, I'd known true happiness. "Say that you don't truly love him," Amarantha spat, and my body twisted, breaking bit by bit. "Admit to your inconstant heart." "Amarantha, please," Tamlin moaned, his blood spilling onto the floor. "I'll do anything." "I'll deal with you later," she snarled at him, and sent me falling into a fiery pit of pain. I would never say it. Never let her hear that, even if she killed me. And if it was to be my downfall, so be it. It would be the weakness that would break me. I would embrace it with all my heart. If this was... For though each of my strikes lands a powerful blow, when I kill, I do it slow. That's what these 3 months had been, a slow, horrible death. What I felt for Tamlin was the cause of this. There was no cure, not pain or absence or happiness. But scorned, I become a difficult beast to defeat. She could torture me all she liked, but it would never destroy what I felt for him. It would never make Tamlin want her, never ease the sting of his rejection. The world became dark at the borders of my vision, taking the edge off the pain. But I bless all those who are brave enough to dare. For so long I had run from it, but opening myself to him, to my sisters, that had been a test of bravery as harrowing as any of my trials. "Say it, you vile beast!" Amarantha hissed. She might have lied her way out of our bargain, but she'd sworn differently with the riddle. Instantaneous freedom, regardless of her will. Blood filled my mouth, warm as it dribbled out between my lips. I gazed at Tamlin's masked face one last time. "Love," I breathed, the world crumbling into a blackness with no end. A pause in Amarantha's magic. "The answer to the riddle," I got out, choking on my own blood, "is love." Tamlin's eyes went wide before something forever cracked in my spine.
Alrighty. That was actually... we'll save it for next time. Alright, that was chapters 43 and 44. Hope you guys enjoyed. We have one more week of A Court of Thorns and Roses, and that's it, baby. Love you guys all. Appreciate you so much. You guys have a wonderful day. I will see you on Friday if you're on Patreon, and I'll see you on Sunday if you are a free 99 person. Love you all. Peace.